Okay, so welcome along everybody to our writing circle today on research proposal writing strategies. Lovely to see you all. I hope you had a nice long weekend. And I think we will get started. Thank you to everybody who's popping their student IDs in the chat. That way we can record your attendance. So just to begin, QT acknowledges the Turrbal and Yagara as the First Nations owners of the lands where QT now stands. We pay respect to their elders' laws, customs and creation spirits. We recognise these lands have always been places of teaching, research and learning. QT acknowledges the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the QT community. Okay, so this is a writing circle today. We have workshops and writing circles. So the writing circles is when you bring your own drafts and we look at exemplars. We still do activities in the workshops, but they focus on giving you an overview of an area of writing practice. And still some examples, but the writing circles, we certainly have a lot more examples. So today's resources, I've actually already put the slides up on Blackboard. I'm just going to pop the link into the chat for you now. And the recording might go up this afternoon, if not in the morning. You'll get an email once I've popped the recording up on Blackboard, but the slides are there now. So our goals for today, looking at the key elements of a research proposal. We're looking at some strategies about informing and persuading. We're looking at improving your evaluative judgment when you're looking at your own and others' works. We do that with our exemplars, and you're going to have some critical discussion with your peers as well. So evaluative judgment, that's your ability to judge the quality of the writing. And I also want to add today that, of course, you're all going to be doing slightly different degrees. It could be some of you might be doing MPhil, some are masters, some doctoral students. So everything we talk about today will be scalable. So if you're at stage 2, obviously you're going to have a much shorter document than someone who's up to confirmation as well. And, you know, a lot of what we talk about today is try to help you to gain your confidence with your writing or improve your confidence. You're all in different fields of study, so we keep the exemplars quite broad, of course, and the strategies are writing principles that can be implemented in every field of study. So as we go along, think about where you're up to and what would be important for you at the stage you're up to right now. So quickly, our introduction, then we're looking at the purposes and the elements and structure. We're going to look at those key strategies for informing and persuading, and then we get into our exemplars quite early on. Now, I did include in the UniHub email reminder that you would have received yesterday morning. Make sure you look at those UniHub reminder emails. Please don't delete them till you look at them, especially for your writing sessions that you come to, because Tasha and I often put instructions in there or about what you need to bring. And I also mentioned that you might like to look at the research proposal workshop that was on a couple of weeks ago. I've just popped the link into the chat anyway, in case you're interested in going back and having a look at that later. I'm not really repeating much from that one, just a tiny little bit. So you might, if you haven't seen it, that's something you might like to do. And do you have your writing ready? So please have your latest draft proposal ready to go shortly, because we'll do some activities. Do a save as, so you have that new document that you can write your notes in. You'll still have the original draft that way. You're not asked to share your drafts. This is just for you. If you don't have a draft handy, grab a pen and paper and write some notes during that activity time. Now, I often get some comments that there wasn't enough time during the session to complete the activities. You have access to the materials, so you can complete them later. We are restrained with our time. So of course, I do give you around 5 minutes, but please complete and keep on going after the session if you need more time. So we do have 2 proposal exemplars today, a quantitative stage 2 and a qualitative research proposal for a PhD. So later on, I will get you to choose which one you want to have a look at, the quantitative or the qualitative. Not yet though, all right? So think about that as we go through. So why exemplars? What's so good about examining them? Well, I want you to be the reader and I want you to be focusing on the quality of the writing and the writing practices. So how do you feel as you're examining the exemplars? And what is it that you notice that makes you feel like you're being led through? Or alternatively, is there some things where you're not quite sure and things could have been written in a more clearer way? And I want you to practice these things when you're reading your own research articles that you've pulled for your lit review or whatever it might be. So it's a really good opportunity to practice being a reader and pulling apart and looking at those effective writing practices that we discuss in these sessions. All right, so very quickly, I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping, I guess this is. Now, what type of research proposal? It could be one of these 3. It could be something else that you're doing. This information is taken from the HiQ website. You know, things may get updated regularly. So if you are looking at this later and things have changed in your faculty or regarding what's required, that's because things get updated. So it's up to you to double check. But this is at the moment the main guidelines there. So you can see the number of words, confirmation is in pages. So you're most likely doing one of these right now. Okay, so what I would like you to do throughout your candidature is be really organized by looking at the resources on HiQ. That's what I was just mentioning about all that information on the previous slide is in your candidature. So that's the place to go about milestones and anything to do with the administration of your candidature. Of course, we've got training and workshops, engage with industry, that's about internships, which hopefully you'll be interested in pursuing one of those, and also plan your career. Has a lot of really good information about your next steps. Don't wait till the end. I know you're at the early stages now, but thinking about your future career is really important at all stages. So please pop into those HiQ sections and have a look at all the really good information in there. So if you have questions about your research milestones, all the information is on HiQ and Blackboard, and you can also always email the Graduate Research Centre as well. As I've said here, planning is crucial to achieve your milestones. So all the information you need is there, and there's a new process now, the way the milestones are done. All that information is in HiQ as well. I'll give you the link in the chat. Okay. And you can see here, there's the information on HiQ. And you can also, there's also really good information about milestones on Blackboard as well. There's a couple of videos. So please utilize all this information so that you know what you're doing and where you're going. All right, so we're going to look at the purposes and the elements we need to include in a research proposal. Don't forget to pop your student ID in the chat box. I know a couple of people have said they didn't receive the UniHub email. You would have, because it's an automatic email that comes. So it somehow got lost, or potentially you have registered as a staff member, and so it will go to that email. Maybe yeah, so you do receive them because they're automatic. If you're registered for this event, you will receive those reminder emails. So maybe they're getting taken to your junk. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, keep your eyes out for those. They always come out the morning before. So today's session would have come out at 8 o'clock yesterday morning. That might help you to find it, but that's okay. If you couldn't find it this time, I'll be uploading the session activity sheet shortly. Okay, so could you write in the chat now? Remember, we were looking at all of you doing different types of research proposals potentially, but what do you think your research proposal requires you to demonstrate? If you can put in the chat A, B, C, or D. What do you think? Okay, pretty much everybody's putting D, all of the above. Yep, absolutely. So this is really three of the key things your proposal will always need: that you're contributing to a body of knowledge, that your research design is appropriate and ethical to investigate your research questions, and of course that your study is manageable in the time that you have. So let's do a bit of a recap of purposes. We're not going to spend too much time on this because it was in the workshop, we spent quite a bit of time on this. So you're providing convincing evidence and reasoning that the study is worthwhile and will contribute to current knowledge. Where's your evidence coming from for your proposals? Most likely from the literature, right? That's the body of knowledge that you're contributing to. Some people have already done maybe a pilot study, so they may well include those results in a proposal. But for most of us, the evidence is coming from the literature. Of course, you need your research plan. And the overall aim is to have a well-structured logical chain of reasoning that connects a research problem and then the solution and benefits that your investigation will yield and the insights that you're going to gain from your investigation. So let's have a look at the key elements. So most research proposals would require this information. The subheadings that you use might be different. You may put research aims and questions separately. The order might be different to this as well, but it's good to know that you have these main subheadings covered. Okay, so there's questions that your readers will be looking for answers from you in your research proposals. So what's the field of study? So remember, when we're writing our proposals and when we're writing our literature reviews as well, that you're contributing to a field of research. So you really need to go broad into the literature and explain that lay of the land. What do we already know? What is it about your field of study that's related to, how does your topic and your research relate to this overall field of research? So yes, you're going to pull out a few specific studies as well, but you must start by discussing the body of knowledge as it already is. And then where does your study fit? Why is this study needed? Because there's a research problem, right? So who's going to benefit and how are they going to benefit from this study that you're doing? What are the variables or concepts that are being investigated? What do we already know? What issues remain? What are the gaps? And how will the research be undertaken? So quite a few questions there, but really important that the reader of your proposal has answers to all of these things here. So obviously the research gaps are very important, but they're not always, that's not all that you're investigating, is it? You're also investigating a research problem. So let's have a look at these key elements that we had just before, and then the key questions, they align. So there's a lot going on there, isn't there? Again, as I said, you may not have these exact subheadings. You might have more, you might have less if you're at stage 2. They could be slightly different. So there with the research methods, if you've got a theoretical framework or conceptual framework, or maybe you're coming from a paradigm, maybe in your proposal, you're not going to talk about those things very much. It will depend, obviously. Everyone will be different. Paradigm might be fairly complicated, but it is the research approach. So are you looking at qualitative, quantitative, mixed? Maybe you're doing grounded theory, ethnography, experiments. So it's a research approach underpinning your research design. So your proposal, you may not have that much about the paradigm. It might just be one sentence or two, or even the theoretical framework. What you need to really have in your proposal is exactly the steps that you're going to put into place, your data collection tools and your analysis, how you're going to do that. So how much you talk about that theory and those underpinning paradigms will depend on how many words that you have. Certainly, once you get further along your candidature, that's when you'll flesh out those things, but potentially in the proposal, you won't have that much time to talk about it too much, maybe just a couple of sentences. So we have got a lot going on in this proposal. What I would like you to do is open your draft and have a look. Do you have these 6 key elements there? Have you answered these key questions? Now, if you're looking through your draft now and you think, I actually don't have that at the moment, do you need it? Probably yes, but that's for you to work out. So what I'm going to do now is give you 5 minutes to have a look through your drafts and make some notes. Okay, so really this activity now, it was very much about whether you have the, the big picture stuff covered. Okay, now obviously everybody's got a different research topic and background and will have different information that you need to include. So this is sort of the big picture stuff. As I said, you will not have these exact subheadings most likely, but this is just those key elements and the questions that your readers will be looking for. The order that you're putting these in your document will be different as well. But this is just a really good way to get you started. All right, let's keep moving. So let's think about structure. So really a lot of where we're at with structure starts with your subheadings, doesn't it? So initially those subheadings are guiding your big picture planning. They're helping you to formulate what's the logical structure. If we just go back to this here, it might flow in this way, potentially, but potentially no. I mean, it makes sense to put the background first, of course, but everything else may well be slightly different depending on what your supervisor wants, depends on your faculty and their guidelines as well. So that can give you a bit of a guide to your subheadings, of course, but ultimately those subheadings, they're telling the reader where you're going, they're telling the structure, and they're providing those visual clues that they need as they read through your document. So it will take some time to get the subheadings right, to get the order of the subheadings right. It's going to take some drafts and some reorganizing and also seeking feedback, of course. But it's a good way to get started, is have that idea of what subheadings you need. So what's so important about subheadings or your table of contents? So really it's important because it sheds light on your topic and your study. Your reader should be able to look at your table of contents and have a little bit of an idea of what you're investigating and the main concepts. So every table of contents is going to be different, but if you look at the work of others, such as the exemplars we're looking at today, and also, of course, the QT guidelines, they are going to be helpful for you. But what I would really want to see from your proposals is subheadings that give us a little bit of information. We can look at your table of contents and say, okay, this looks interesting. I know what topics are being investigated here. I'm looking forward to reading what's under those subheadings. Right, so we're going to look at a couple of examples, and what I would like you to do is think about what's your thoughts when you look at these tables of contents that we're going to look at. So do they shed light, do you think, on the research topic? If so, how? And then also we're looking at two. Is there one that you think sheds light better than the other one? And any other thoughts that you think of when we're looking at these examples. So let's look at the first one. So this is from exemplar 1. I haven't put the title because I want you to see about shedding light. Do you think from reading this table of contents, have we got a little bit of an idea on the research topic? Now, this one is a QUT stage 2 research proposal, okay? And those highlighted sections there are from those guidelines that I said were on high Q. We can't go through all of the guidelines. That's why I popped them in at the start for you to go and investigate further the one that applies to you. And also, of course, your supervisors will tell you how much they want you to stick to those guidelines as well and what they would like you to add. So the highlighted parts are QUT guidelines, and the rest obviously are the writer has put their own in. So tell me what you notice. Is it shedding light? What do you think? No, not enough. So do you think that part of that is because we're bound, this person's been bound by those guidelines potentially? I mean, I think the research design gives us a little bit of an idea, but I feel like if we were in this field of study, we would have a little bit more insight. So the readers they would be from this field of study. Yeah, something to do with civil engineering, maybe. Not quite. So realistically, they probably need to have a few more words in some of those subheadings, maybe. All right, let's have a look at the next one. Now, this is from exemplar 2. It's not from QUT, it's outside of QUT. This is similar to a confirmation document, basically. Again, I haven't put the title. It's an interesting one as well, slightly different to the one before. We'll actually go back and have a look at it in a minute. But we've got a little bit of an idea, haven't we? At least we know what research design it is with that, grounded theory. But then the study population, we're going to have to wait and see, won't we? The study sample, we're going to have to wait. So if we go back, so they've got background and lit review, program of design, resource and funding. And then this one's got aim, context, which is a bit like the background, contribution, research plan, questions. Yeah, so slightly different. So you can see how it's very hard for me to say, here's some subheadings, you can use these. You'll have to work them out. But yes, please use those QUT guidelines that are here, but in amongst that, you can probably have some subheadings that shed light a little bit better. All right, so what I'm going to ask you to do now is another activity, this time on your draft. Now, depending on how big your draft is at this stage, you might only be able to do this for a section, maybe. If you're in your confirmation document, it could be quite long. So here we're looking at that draft structure and your subheading. So when you're going in now, I want you to think about what's working. What do you think looks good after looking at those two examples? What do you think might be needing to be changed or maybe restructured? And we're just going to go on to the next slide and look at some common problems. Someone has said in the chat, the confirmation guidelines don't always provide the headings in the same way the stage 2 ones. Yeah, and that's because it's a much bigger document and everybody's researching something different and in different faculties and schools. So yeah, it's one of those things. I know a lot of students ask me, you know, is there a template? And there's just not. There's not, because every one of you is doing something different. So yes, we can have these guidelines. I can show you these examples. You can go and find other examples as well. But at the end, it's going to be up to you to have that really nice table of contents and those subheadings that will shed the light for the reader. So as I said, you might not be able to finish this activity today, and that's okay because you've got all the resources. You can go on with it later. But I do want you to spend a bit of time now. And this is what I want you to have a look at, is these common problems. There's quite a few questions in here. Remember, this is in your activity sheet as well, if you prefer to use that than the slides here. But highlight your subheadings and look at them. Are they clear? Does it shed light on the topic? Does the first sentence under each subheading match the subheading? Are the words in the subheading in that first sentence? I see this a lot, a beautiful subheading, and then the first sentence is completely off topic and doesn't say anything about the subheading. So you'll need to reword or put a new sentence if that's the case. And then keep reading through those first few sentences, because remember, under every subheading, which is a section, you will always need to come back and remind the reader about your research aim or your problem or your significance or something to bring that section back to your specific study. And then as you're reading through each section, do each of those paragraphs keep on adding to your points, or have you accidentally gone off topic? That can happen sometimes. So this is what you're looking at, that bigger picture of those subheadings and those sections. And also, do you think you have enough subheadings? Maybe you need to add some more. So quite a few things here, a lot going on again. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to have a look through. So you're checking your own draft right now. Okay, we're going to keep going now. So when you're writing your research proposal, you are informing and persuading. What are you informing about? Basically everything. Okay. The research background, the topic, the significance, the research problem, everything. But you're also persuading at the same time. Okay. Persuading that this research is important and it should be undertaken, right? That's what you're doing at the research proposal stage, is persuading that you should be able to continue on and undertake this research. Okay, and one of the most important things that you're persuading is that this research is valuable. It's valuable because there's a research problem, and the research problem is urgent, it's challenging, we need insight to help someone, whoever your stakeholders are, to improve something, whatever it is that you're looking to improve. So make sure that in your proposal that your research problem is very clear and that you persuade the readers that this is something that needs to be solved and we need more insight to do that. And then once the problem is clear, your reader will understand, okay, I can see why we need insight into this. This is valuable research that should go ahead. So you're telling your research story, you're leading the reader through, but as we know in a proposal, it's quite compressed, isn't it? You may not have all that many words depending on what stage you're up to, but you also need to take a stance and you need that evidence-based argument. And we need you to be punchy. So what do I mean by that? I mean, be assertive, be persuasive. We're going to look at some examples of that in a minute. So it's about the words that you use and the explanations that you give, that making sure they're explicit and they're clear. So what we're going to look at is these 3 specific research writing strategies: critical voice, which is demonstrating your critical thinking and your understanding of the topic. Remember, yes, you want your readers to gain a deep understanding of what you're doing, but you're also demonstrating your deep understanding of the current body of knowledge, the research problem, and why we need more insight. Then we also need you to be engaging your reader. So you do this through that logical, clear structure by being explicit, keeping the reader in the loop, and using appropriate and strong, punchy vocabulary. Then, if you do those two things, you're going to be making the value of the study explicit and clear. And we need to keep reminding the reader of the problem, the aims, the research questions, and that anticipated contribution. All right, so 3 research writing strategies. Let's look at an example. So this is the example from exemplar 2. Remember we saw in the table of contents that in that exemplar, they're using grounded theory. Now that's a research method where your researcher is putting together a systematic framework to build a theory. So a grounded theory is one that is discovered and developed and verified during the research. It's a systematic data collection and analysis pertaining to a specific phenomenon. In this case, it's around how teachers manage having children with disabilities in their classrooms. All right, so let's have a look at the exemplar. A preliminary examination of the research literature has failed to identify research studies that have used a grounded theory methods to examine the way teachers manage the situation of having a child with a disability included in their class. Okay, so what's that? That's a research gap, right? It's still not telling us any significance as such, but as we know, we need a research gap, of course. This study is therefore uniquely placed to generate theory grounded in data collected from rural schools in Western Australia. Okay, so that's giving us the context, the setting of the research. It's anticipated the theory that emerges from this study will be comprehensible and make sense to those teachers who will be studied. The nature of grounded theory is such the emergent theory will be abstract enough and include sufficient variation to make it applicable to a variety of contexts. That's interesting as well. So, yep, it's rural schools in Western Australia. The aim is, though, that we can apply this theory to other contexts. In other words, the theory developed will be of use to other teachers involved with inclusion, as well as other groups such as school administrators, educational policymakers, and members of the wider educational research community. Grounded theory has been used extensively as a research methodology in sociology, in nursing, and related fields, but less widely in education. Therefore, this study will provide an opportunity for observations to be made about the applicability of this mode of research in education, and more specifically in the field of inclusive education. Okay, so thinking back to our 3 key strategies, let's have a look and pull this one apart. I've missed a sentence there. You can see that should be 8 sentences with my numbering. Sorry about that. All right, so you've got critical voice in yellow, engaging the reader in green, value of the research in blue. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Let's think about critical voice. So what is this? This is where the critical thinking is demonstrated, making judgments regarding the field of study. So critical voice failed to identify research studies that have already used this grounded theory method. What do you think about the word failed, right? Strong, punchy, excellent, good use of vocabulary. This study is uniquely placed to generate theory grounded in data collected. So again, nice vocabulary, uniquely. We know what that means. The study will be comprehensible and make sense to those teachers who will be studied, again, using their critical voice. All right, so what about engaging the reader? Remember that this is about that logical flow, being explicit, using strong vocabulary. Now, what do you notice too? Critical voice, engaging your reader, they're overlapping. I could have put the word failed in green. I could have put the word uniquely in green. So these writing practices we're looking at and pulling apart, they overlap, don't they? So I've said for engaging the reader, this study is there for, so linking, leading us through. It's anticipated, the theory that emerges will be comprehensible. So again, leading us through, telling us very clearly what the projected contribution is going to be. And then I've also highlighted in green a couple of those transition signals too. What about the value of the research? So use to other teachers, other groups, and then that last sentence. So there's applicability to using this style of research, meaning grounded theory, and in the field of inclusive education. All right, so we've got those 3 strategies there. As we said, they're overlapping. I probably could have highlighted some slightly different or with both colors. So when we put these strategies together, these 3 strategies, we get the sections and the paragraphs to be informing and persuading. So let's look again at this example with a slightly different formula this time, which will then also helps us to bring these 3 writing strategies together. So for each section you write, now we've just looked at a paragraph, haven't we? But for each section, consider this formula where you state your claim, right? So what is that doing? That's engaging the reader and showing your critical voice. Explain your claim in a really, really clear way. Again, engaging and being critical. You're going to provide evidence from the literature. And then you need to clearly explain the significance of your claim again, okay? So just by stating it, explaining it, giving evidence, that's most of the picture, but we need to always go further and say, well, so what? Why is this information important, right? So those sentences that really explicitly state the significance of your claim or your arguments or your point are super important. You don't have to have them in every single paragraph necessarily, but you certainly need to throughout each section, okay? Because otherwise you have what I would call words on a page, right? You've got these really nice information, but you're not persuading, and we need to persuade, don't we? So that significance states the value of your study, demonstrates your critical voice again, and engages the reader, keeps them interested, persuaded, and saying, yes, this is important. This is significant. I can't wait to keep on reading and see what else is in this proposal. So let's have a look at our example. So the claim is in sentences 1 and 2, right? There's a research gap. Therefore, this is a uniquely placed study. Then sentences 3 and 4 explain further. So it's unique. It's going to make sense to the teachers who are going to be studied. And also it's going to, the emergent theory will be abstract enough to make it applicable to a variety of contexts. So there was an overlap there between explaining the claim and giving us some evidence as well. Then what do you think about sentence number 5 there? In other words, the theory developed from this research will be of use to other teachers. So they've really clearly flagged here using their strong vocabulary. So we've got, this is a really good way too, by the way, if you're going to use a quote. Notice it's in a sentence, and then the writer has actually explained what that quote means. In other words, other people will be able to use this kind of theory that they're developing in this study. And then what about sentence 6? There's a little bit more evidence there. Again, grounded theory, it's been used before, so it's a theory that is usable and doable. And then sentences 7 and 8, again, are giving us that significance. So do you agree with my highlighting there? And can you also see how we're building this picture where we're giving the information, but we're also being persuasive? Do you think it's persuasive? Are you convinced that grounded theory is going to be something appropriate for this? Obviously, there's a lot more to write. This is one paragraph, but you can see here that you're using these writing strategies throughout every paragraph. Now, as I said, not every paragraph is going to have that significance of the claim or that so what, but certainly within every section. Now, let's pretend that we've taken out the significance. Well, not pretend that we have, because we have. A preliminary examination has failed to identify the research studies. So no one's used grounded theory with this context. This is uniquely placed, nice, it's anticipated. We're going to get this comprehensible theory. We've got sufficient variation to make it applicable, and then grounded theory has been used extensively in other fields. Right. So good information, isn't it? But so what? We're kind of left hanging a little bit here, I would say. So if we add it back in again, those sentences with the significance, so much better, more persuasive. So here, information, yes, we can understand it. It's good. Yep, great. Sounds good to me. But so what? Who cares? Why is this important? We have those extra sentences in there now, and it really does make a difference. So I hope that you can see that. As I said, I'm not saying every single paragraph needs those claims for significance every time. Maybe you need to build up to it. Okay, but I certainly would not want to see you in any section have none of that so what, those significant and really strong sentences to explicitly say this is important because of these reasons. All right, so we're doing really well for time. So what we're going to do is have a look at our first lot of exemplars, which we're going to go through together. Okay, so you can see now activity 3, examining exemplars. We're looking for critical voice, engaging the reader, and the value of the research. Remember, this is stage 2. There's a thesis title, experimental investigation of high-order laser modes and beam shaping in additive manufacturing applications. We haven't included the supervisory team or the background. Oh, actually we have. We're looking at the introductory statement. So remember we looked at the table of contents for this one. So in the guidelines, it's calling this first section introductory statement. So let's have a little look. In late 2014, Australia's chief scientist outlined the strategic science and research priorities to the nation, 8 topics of significant scientific interest. Among these was the advanced manufacturing priority aimed at stimulating innovation and growth in Australian manufacturing industries that have suffered in recent years by making Australian industry more innovative and competitive. One particular field that has seen significant growth is additive manufacturing, okay, which was up here in the title, wasn't there? Okay, then we got an explanation about that, also called layer-based. AM is thought by many as a paradigm shift, similar to the production line. This is not hard, considering nearly every industry is looking to AM to produce everything from children's toys to rocket engines. It goes so far as to include the production of human replacement organs and tissues. And then here at QUT, working towards patient-specific tissue replacement technologies. So it's 3D printing is the other name for popularly 3D printing. So we can all imagine what that is. The research proposed in this project aims to investigate the potential for new and improved functionality by using modified laser beams, altering the way the laser interacts with additive materials has the potential to be as important as optimizing the material itself, and it is at present quite poorly understood. Okay, so is there information about the research problem that you can see as yet? So what have we got? Critical voice, engaging the reader, and the value. So I think all of this is good. It sets us up with some nice background. This is an important person. This is a nice definition. We always need definitions. Okay, so here's our research aim. What colors? Yeah. So it's probably actually more likely our value. So is there anything about the research problem? There's this. That's a research gap, isn't it? Or do you think it's the research problem? So we could say, yes, it's the start. It is probably more likely the research gap, but they are saying that we don't know enough about this, the way the laser interacts. Is there information about the research aim? Yep. And that one's very explicit, isn't it? That's number 7. Why this research is needed. So it begins to tell us about it, isn't it? Yeah, the problem is that it's poorly understood. Yes, it sort of overlaps with the gap, but I think we can give the benefit of the doubt to say, well, the experiments that they're going to do are going to give us more understanding as well. So it's touching on the fact that there's a research gap, but I think it's also saying, hey, this is a really important technology, and this is going to help us to work out these potential new and improved functionality. So why is this research needed? We get a little bit of this idea in there, don't we? To say, well, the Australian manufacturing industries have been suffering. We want to be more innovative and competitive. This additive manufacturing has become really important. So, you know, we could probably say, again, here, yes. Would we say maybe 2 and 3? What else? Maybe even 7 and 8. Give us a little bit of an idea. Critical voice, so explicit judgments using evidence. I would say yes. These sorts of things here. It's a paradigm shift. Critical voice, yeah. Yeah, I think this is good in here. That's giving us a bit of a idea, starting to tell us where we're going. Yeah, and if we can do this, we can, yeah. Probably here be as important. So maybe we need to say, maybe we could have had something else in here about exactly why the lasers interacting could be important, but that would be said later. And you know, what you'll figure out as well is that in these proposals, you still need to structure your information, and you can't say everything at once. So I would say yes. Is the value of the research clear yet? We're getting there, aren't we? But you know, this is the very first paragraph, you know, so starting to. How does the writer engage the reader? Let's just see if we can find any of that punchy vocab. I mean, Australia's chief scientist, he sounds pretty important, doesn't he? Significant scientific interest to the future of Australia. That seems pretty strong to me. They've been suffering. We can all imagine that. We want to be more innovative and competitive. Yeah. Yeah, this is not hard to accept. That's not bad. Yeah. So optimizing, that's a good word too. So yeah, not too bad would be what I would say there. We've got some of those things we're looking for in there, and it's beginning to set us up, because we were wondering from the table of contents, weren't we, what the research was about. So very early on, we're getting a good idea. All right, research problem. The key research aim is to investigate the interaction between laser light and heavy metal oxide glasses using tailored beam parameters with the goal of optimizing and better controlling AM processes. So that's quite a lot in there, but I think it's pretty good. The key research aim, it's engaging the reader. Examples, yep. So we are not in this field of study, so it's okay. We're not always going to understand exactly, but the writer will give us more information. Okay, so a bit there about largely overlooked. Right, so narrowing down here. So beginning to get a little bit about the value, isn't it? So I don't mind this. It's going from broad to narrow, which is what we wanted to do. Okay, so giving us more information and then narrowing down to the materials and then saying, okay, this is actually the field that we're looking at in this research. Okay, initially we used to optical diffusers, specialist glassware. Later it will shift to transparent heavy metal oxide glasses. Yep, so that's giving us some good information there. The primary experimental goal, which is good, engaging the reader again to explore new or improved functionality. Yeah. One particular example is cost reduction. Yeah, quite right. So this is good. This is a bit about the value, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Right. So this is starting to tell us about the value as well. So that's not bad. Research aim, again, we've got yes. Why the research is needed, yes, we're getting much more into it. Research gaps, yes, which we already had. Problem explicit and clear, it's beginning to be. Okay. We want new and improved functionality. Yeah. 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 Okay. So remember again, this is a proposal. The number of words is restricted. There's only so many things that you can say. And I think we're getting a good idea of where this is going. Potentially could be more explicit at times. Is that maybe what you're feeling? But it's not too bad. Is there critical voice? Explicit judgments, using evidence. Yep. There's our evidence there. However, some good engaging the reader there. Yep. So I would say, yes, there's critical voice. Yes, we're beginning to see that the research, what the value is, because we're going to have cost reduction. That's one thing. There's probably many more than that, but we'll get to those, of course. Is there information that could be leading to the research implications? Yes. So remember they're taught here, one of the main things is the materials, okay? So at the moment, they're utilizing expensive resins. Okay, so the value of this research is going to go towards cost reduction. Yep, and we've got some transition signals, one particular example, a second example. See, I like that. That's nice too. Yeah, but it hasn't started with the examples, right? Broad to narrow every time. So it's good. I think it's good. All right. So let's continue. Okay, so I think that example one, remember we've only read the first few paragraphs, but we've really got a good idea of what's going on, which is really important. Okay, next one, exemplar two. This is a research proposal, a bit like a confirmation. It's not from QT. The inclusion of children with a severe or profound intellectual disability, how teachers manage the situation. Remember, we looked at that example just before of grounded theory. All right, let's have a look at this research aim. So the aim of this study is to use grounded theory methods to develop a theory. So that's good. Okay, we're given the context there. Currently in Western Australia, children with intellectual disabilities are taught in a variety of educational settings. Okay, some good background information there. The vast majority attend education support schools. Missed that one. In rural and remote areas. So this is an interesting part of it, isn't it, here? This is showing that the focus in bigger cities, then there's all these support schools. In remote areas, don't have this. These kids are going to have to go to the school like every other student. Yeah. Yep, so we're getting a really good idea there of what the research is about. Inclusion involves numerous teachers. The number of children that are currently is extremely small. Okay, we've got some criteria there. Some definitions, which is good. Okay, yeah. Some more definitions. Okay, and more definitions. All right, is there information about the research problem? Yes, it seems to be that there's a lot of strategies and a lot of settings, isn't it? Is that what you're getting as the problem? But then there's all this information by saying that there's not many of the kids. Yep, there we go. I feel like this is the bit. These teachers have the key responsibility. Okay, so I think we've got yes, why the research is needed, beginning to, critical voice, a little, is the value of the research clear, beginning, and then what do you think? All of these definitions are needed. There's some transition signals. More definitions, which we need. Furthermore, nice transition signals. Okay, so we do have a little bit about what the problem is. Again, you know, this is very early on, but you can see how if we can be stronger and be explicit really early about the research problem, it sets the reader up better, doesn't it? So we can imagine we're still sort of using our own common sense at the moment to work out what's the value here. It's there a little bit, but you can see sometimes that structure is difficult because these definitions are really important, aren't they? They need to go early. You can't start talking about, you know, exactly what's going to happen in this study until we have these definitions in there. So that's part of your balance, isn't it? All right. Okay, so we look together at those strategies and at those beginning sections of the those exemplar research proposals. As I said, we shouldn't be too critical because, as you can see, there's a lot going on. Everyone's got a different different subheadings, different topics, different backgrounds, and you can see that you can't say everything at once. So, but you can also see the importance of being very explicit early on about there is this research problem and we need more insight for these reasons. Now, those ones that we just looked at, that will come later, but potentially could have been a bit more explicit at the beginning. But I think overall, there was evidence of those strategies, wasn't there? All right, so let's have a quick look about the research methodology in your proposal, because it is a very, very important part, of course. And it's really one of the main sections that your readers will be looking at okay, and actually pulling apart and giving you lots of feedback on. So provide as much detail as your word limit allows. Be explicit, be convincing. You need to be justifying very, very early on as well. So as we said before, you know, that approach, your paradigm, your frameworks, maybe if you're in stage 2, or an MPhil proposal, you might only be able to add a couple of sentences around that. But again, always broad to narrow. So those underpinning theories and concepts are still important, but you might not have much room to say much at this stage. Of course, your participants, who, how many, or if you're doing experiments, what experiments are you doing? Not everybody, of course, is doing human research. How will you collect and store the data? What are the research instruments that you're using? How will each stage or phase inform your research questions? It all needs to tie together. Is your research design going to be reliable and valid? Do you have to worry about research bias? What other things, limitations might you need to minimize? Data analysis, make sure you have enough information on that. Your readers will be very interested in how you're going to not only collect, but analyze the data. Sometimes I'll see in research proposals, there's a lot of information on data collection and very, very little on analysis. So try to make them fairly even. The data analysis is really important too. Also, of course, don't forget about ethics in every stage of your research. Your faculty will always have research ethics advisors. I'm actually going to pop into the chat a link. You should get in contact with them. They'll be very helpful, especially with your ethics application if you haven't done that already. Reliability of a research design is about, or your data collection tools, it's about the consistency of the measure. If another researcher was to do the same study, would they yield the same results? Validity is about the accuracy. Are your data collection strategies measuring what you want them to measure? All right, so a lot going on, of course, in the methodology, and again, might be quite compressed. You might not have too many words that you can utilize in that section. So it can be difficult, and you will need to do a fair bit of drafting and get some feedback too, of course. All right, so because we don't do too much looking at methodologies, because we're all doing different methodologies, it's hard for me to get examples that you're going to be all interested in. But I thought this was a good opportunity to see how these exemplars do put forward their research designs. So peer discussion, we're going to go in and do that shortly. I'll give you some time to read, of course, first, but this is my spiel every time about why peer discussion is good, why I want you guys to be involved in this. You know, talking, collaborating, problem solving, discussing with each other is really important to help you to underpin what we've been talking about. You'll see different people's ideas and points of view. Doesn't mean that yours aren't right, of course. You're the reader, so your points of view are right. It doesn't matter if they're slightly different to others. But yes, good opportunity to chat with your peers as often as you can. So let's have a look what we're going to do. All right, so if you can write in the chat whether you want to do the quant, so that's exemplar 1, that's the physics one about the 3D printing, or do you want to do exemplar 2, which is the one about the grounded theory? If you can pop into the chat which one you want, and I'm going to give you 9 minutes, okay, to read through. All right, so just some final tips before we go and before we get to our Q&A. So today's resources, they're up on Blackboard. I'll just pop the link into the chat one more time, and I'll send you an email once I get the recording up. If you want to know more, a lot of the strategies we talk about today, I discuss in much more detail again with more exemplars. You can see there what we have coming up. related to thesis writing, proposal writing. And also, you know, Blackboard, everything that we've already done. So the literature review stuff has been already done for this semester. So that's up on Blackboard as well, if you're interested in that. And one of my key tips is about seeking feedback. So we can see proposal writing has a lot of things that you need to include, and it's sometimes can be challenging to know what to put in, what to leave out, and the structure. So please seek feedback as much as you can. And don't just rely on your supervisors. You know, you have your peers, you have family and friends. I don't think you would send, you know, a huge 30-page document to family or friends, but you could certainly ask them to read a paragraph or two, develop that network of readers and people who are able to give you some constructive feedback, and make sure you take an active role as well. Remember, with your supervisors, be an active participant. It's a two-way dialogue. You can ask them for feedback on specific things, ask specific questions. And, you know, if the feedback is to say that that what you've written isn't quite clear, you'll need to believe the reader, you'll need to reword, add some more info, maybe you need a table or a figure, whatever it might be. Reduce those emotions as well is what will help with that seeking feedback and improving as well. Don't always respond straight away, and just know the people giving you feedback are trying to improve the readability and your draft, of course. We do have HDR writing peer feedback sessions. I would love to see some of you, all of you, at one of those sessions. We've only got a few more left for the end of 2022. You can see there's one next week. You can bring any kind of draft that you have, and you will get focused, actionable feedback. So please come along to those. Here's two really great resources as well. You know, I really think if you can make some time to watch the video, you don't have to watch all of it, just the first sort of 20-30 minutes if you wanted to. You can see there. And also the book, The Craft of Research, is really good. It is in the library as an ebook, but definitely these are really good resources for you as you move forward through your candidature. And for today, what we've talked about is the subheadings, getting that overall structure right, seeking feedback, finding exemplars in your field, looking how the other researchers write, implementing those effective writing strategies that we looked at, engaging your reader, your critical voice, and really being explicit about the value of your study. Go back to the activities if you did run out of time, of course. And as we saw as well, HiQ and Blackboard have so many resources. And don't forget, your faculty will have support and guidelines as well, potentially, that you'll need to be aware of. You can always ask your supervisor about those. So just before we get to our Q&A, I would love any feedback that you have about today. You can use that QR code that's there, or you can use this link. I've just popped it into the chat. I do take notice of your feedback, of course. This is quick, it's anonymous. Remember that 5 is strongly agree, 1 is strongly disagree. So if you could fill out that would be fantastic. Only takes a minute. And coming up tomorrow, there's a HDR Careers Q&A. They're really good. You can go in and ask any questions. Tomorrow is as well, and next week on the 11th, we have the HDR Writers Wellbeing Lounge, where you do writing sprints, engage with your peers, get some writing done. Recommend those. And we've got a writing circle on writing your methodology next week as well. So please come along to those. And you might not have heard about this before. This is a design sprint that's run by our people that do the internships. Sorry, I just had a complete forget there. So it's a 6-week program. There's 2-week intensive where you go in and there you can see the topic there. So it's looking at sustainable development. So if that's anything to do with something around your research topic, this design sprint would probably be great for you. And it's an amazing opportunity. You work with industry partners. So this is through our industry engagement section of GRED. So if you want to know more, I just popped the link into the chat as well. So maybe some of you would be interested in the design sprint. And of course, you get your HDR Matters every Monday morning with everything that's on, HiQ and Blackboard for all of the resources as well. And if you haven't done our HDR skills assessment tool, because you're early in your candidature, good way to start. And then you can go in a couple more times to see how you've advanced your transferable skills. And that's really all the information, all the housekeeping to end. And I know a few of you have to go, which is completely understandable. But if you have any questions or any comments about the exemplar that you looked at or anything else today, please pop your mic on, or you can type into the chat, whatever you like. There's still a couple of you here. Anyone got a question?
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
I'm very at the very infancy of my research. I haven't even applied yet, but I was just looking. I'm in the middle of writing my first research proposal for my application to study an MPhil. And I was just sort of wanting a little bit of, I kind of am just going off the template through what is needed for health. And I was wondering if there was anywhere that I can kind of, besides my supervisors, just work on it with and bounce some ideas, because I'm quite fresh when it comes to doing all of this.
Yeah. So are you not enrolled as yet, or you are?
Not yet. I'm in the process.
Okay. So once you're enrolled, you can certainly come to one of those peer feedback sessions. But you're sort of saying you want someone to talk to before you're enrolled, right?
Well, because I need to put my understanding was to apply for the MPhil, I need to submit my research proposal in my application. So I just want to make sure that I'm doing it right before I submit it in my application.
Yeah. Probably at this point, your supervisors are the best ones. Yeah, it's hard to, whether or not, I mean, you've been able to attend today, so that's good. If you're able to attend any of the other sessions, then you're most welcome. But I would say your supervisors are the best one, and your application is going to be quite short too, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think for you, if you go back and look at what we sort of set up earlier today, there was a lot of stuff there, wasn't there? So you probably won't have research questions as yet, but definitely your research problem, and a little bit of evidence around that, and then a little bit about what the insights are that you would be expecting and how they would be helpful, and then a little bit about the research gap. So at this stage, it's really about saying, hey, we have this research problem. If we had more insight, we would be able to help whoever your stakeholders are. So really just focus on that and be brave, be confident. You can use that strong language to say that, particularly around health, my guess would be that the research you're proposing is going to help the health outcomes of a certain cohort. So you can be strong, is what I would say. And I think, trust yourself that you are on the right track. And remember, this is the very beginning. Okay, you're going to keep on getting feedback and you might change a few things here and there. So try not to be too, I guess, worried that, maybe they won't like my ideas. If you've got your evidence there and you write a good proposal that really says, hey, my research can give us this insight that's going to contribute to our knowledge, then you're on the right track. And they may steer you in another way regarding your research design potentially. But certainly everyone who's reading that and your supervisors will know this is the very beginning, and, they won't be too tough would be what I would say. So you can be confident. I think too, with your research design, certainly make sure you have enough room to give them a good overview with a little bit of justification. And, the justification could be because that's what others have done before. Okay, you don't have to reinvent. So I think be strong, be confident. If you can come to any of the other things that are on beforehand, then that'll be good. But yeah, just trust yourself. And
Thank you.
that's okay. That's okay. Because you're obviously motivated. I think you had a baby there. So
Maybe.
yeah. So obviously you're very motivated and this is something you're doing because you think it's important. So trust yourself.
Cool. Thank you so much.
That's okay. No worries. Anyone else got a question? I think this goes to all of you, by the way, what I just said to Danielle. You just trust yourself. The whole point of these proposals is for you to get that expert feedback. Okay. So if you do a really good job of saying why this is important, what is the significant contribution and new contribution and insight you're going to make, what they're going to give you feedback on is just going to make it better. Okay. All right. Well, I've only got a couple of you here. Is everyone good? Do you think you're ready to go or you want to ask a last question? No, everyone's going. All right. So thank you for coming today and good luck with your research proposals. Please come to some peer feedback sessions and all of the sessions we've got coming up for the rest of the semester. All right. I will see you guys soon.